All right. Welcome to another edition of Sabbath Lounge. This is Matt.
And Jake here.
And today we're talking Torah.
Talking Torah today.
And we're on week
3.
And we're going to talk about Abram.
Abram and how he goes out.
And his name is not Abraham at this moment.
No.
And so let's talk about the art here a little bit. We're trying to figure out who's who. Clearly you got Abraham and you've got Isaac and Ishmael, probably represented as the two young lads here. And then we were trying to think, is this Sarah here in the middle? We think maybe so because all eyes appear to be on her.
Yeah. Although then, is this actually Abraham and Isaac down here? You think it is.
Abraham and Isaac?
Or,
Isaac and Ishmael?
Come on. Isaac and Ishmael. Because it looks like this would be Ishmael. And he's like, I'm going to take you over in the bushes and wear you out. That's what it looks like.
Yes, it does.
But then again, this looks like a nursing baby.
Yes.
And maybe this is, who knows?
Yeah. Definitely interesting.
I don't trust this as historical accuracy.
No, definitely not. But anyway, we're glad you're here. Thank you for checking us out. And if you haven't read this, you should go read this. Read this. If it's been a while since you read it, read it. And
And again, talking Torah, this is the Torah portions.
Yes.
We're talking through the Torah portions.
And so one of the first things that was kind of interesting is thinking about who Abram was. And so it says he was from the land of the Chaldeans.
Yeah.
And so if you're looking at the Middle East, and the Middle East is in front of you, and north is at the top, to the right is the Persian Gulf today. And originally it was called the Chaldean Gulf, is what we understand.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And which is modern day Iraq. And they were real famous for building ziggurats and these weird pyramid things.
Yeah. I zigguratsed once.
Yeah, did you?
I was out of commission for a week.
I bet you were.
I don't even know what ziggurats is.
Yes.
They built them, though.
It's like a pyramid.
You can see it didn't last.
Yes. It wasn't popular. It didn't catch on. Actually, it was kind of a big deal.
Oh.
So anyway, so it says that they leave there and that his dad ends up in Haran. And which is fairly close to Turkey, kind of up in that part of the world, modern day. And but it's just kind of interesting that you have the Tower of Babel, and the world gets dispersed. You've got this genealogy line of Noah, Seth, that gets into the Tower of Babel, and then they're dispersed all over the world. And there's a time period which passes by. Do we know how many years that was? Probably can know.
Yeah, we can know that because it gives you the
record.
genealogy. Yeah.
So you can find that out, and then Abraham is called out of Babylon and called out to follow the Father's commandments. Should sound familiar.
Yeah.
So seems like a pattern.
I feel like I've heard this story before.
Yes, it's definitely a pattern that you see in Scripture, but I had never really thought about Abraham following that pattern until just recently.
Yeah, I didn't think of the called out of Babylon until you see that Chaldea is where
Babylon here, yeah.
So,
but we do believe this is before. I mean, it gets confusing because I believe this is before Babylon, but
right,
like the empire that we know. But
what would eventually become Babylon is that area.
And so this just kind of shows you the route that he takes and when he gets to Shechem, where the covenant is made.
Right.
So, if you look at other extra biblical resources, there are other extra biblical resources that allude to the fact that Abram's father was an idol maker, and he escapes this life. And it was through Shem. Shem is the one that taught him the ways of the Father, which is, kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So, and that basically Abram is willing to leave his earthly father's house, which it kind of makes you go back to words that Yeshua says, where he says, "Who are my mothers and father? Who are my brothers and sisters? Those who do the will of my Father."
Yeah.
And Abram definitely is somebody who seems to be about his heavenly Father's will over his earthly father's will.
Right.
And he's willing to leave the earthly kingdom to follow. So once again, it's another micro example of even how Yeshua calls the disciples out to drop everything and follow him. You see Abram is a man of action.
Right.
And over in this story, he is like, you want me to do what? All right, done. Doing it.
Yeah.
No questions asked.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and he tells us that Yeshua tells us that, and Paul, that if you were sons of Abraham, you'd do the works of Abraham.
Yeah.
And then he tells us that we should want to be the seed of Abraham, right? Mm-hmm. If we're going to claim the seed of Abraham, then you have to go back to being a seed of Abraham and doing the works of Abraham.
Yeah. That's a good point. And then, here's another map, a journey that, kind of showing where they all took of Isaac, Jacob. And, because they do kind of follow a similar pattern here.
They're all kind of running around the same area all the time.
And we also talked about it's a long ways. It looks like a long way to go from Ur over to Egypt.
Yeah.
It wasn't something you just did lightly. Yeah, it took some preparation.
You're probably not going back and forth very often.
No. So this was a life-changing journey for sure. So, we don't even hardly understand that because we just get in the car and we drive or we fly, and but it's very different. And so I have another map. For me, maps help me understand. This is a little more zoomed out, so you can see there are lots of words here you've probably heard of, like Tarsus and Damascus, and you see where Egypt is, but this kind of shows Ur and Haran, kind of where they were in relation to each other.
Right. We could start a series called Matt's Maps.
Matt's Maps.
Yeah.
I like it. And then here it is it overlaid on a modern map. So you can see where Iran is, Syria, Lebanon, Israel. So that's kind of, what it looked like on the modern map of where this all occurs. And then, of course, timeline is very important here. And we had much discussion about this connection between, as you can see, you've got Terah, who lived here. And then that's Abram's father and Sarah's father, sister and wife to Abraham.
Yeah.
So you have all this like, what's happening?
Yeah.
That incest? Is that weird? So what were you saying earlier? You said that something about Terah.
So Terah is father of Sarah and father of Abram, but Sarah has a different mother. And that's what it says in Genesis 20, I believe.
Right. And then we have had some people in our group, we discussed, well, she's, what did they say she was?
Niece.
And so, I don't know. I mean,
because there's this idea that she's actually the daughter of Haran and Lot's sister.
Yeah.
Is the other thought process on that.
Right.
And you'd have to go into the Hebrew and look at that in detail to come to your conclusion on that.
Yeah. But you definitely have this story where Abraham appears to, he lies and says, this is my sister, and really it's his wife. And so, and he kind of figures it out. Abimelech. Is it Abimelech? Did it say his name? I've always assumed it's Abimelech.
I think Abimelech's the title.
Yeah. And so, it's like he watches them and he just sees like them totally kissing or something. And he's like, wait a minute. Hey, I don't think that's your sister. If so, that's really weird. So,
come to find out, Abram apparently had his weird dude days.
And so apparently, the legend goes that bad stuff happened. He had dreams. He had,
plagues of some kind. Yeah.
And he's like, get rid of her. She's bad juju. And so that's what he thought, that, because he did believe in that kind of thing, and it weirded him out. And he was kind of mad at Abraham, but not really, because he gives him gifts.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is where Abram gets all his wealth.
He gets rich from this moment.
It happens. Although he does have 318 fighting men that were born in his house. So they followed him. So he already had a big gathering following him.
Yeah. the original 300 maybe.
Yeah.
And so this is a zoom in, showing, the lineage again of Abram and Hagar coming in there, Ishmael, Keturah. So, and this just kind of lays out, saying this happened in, I forgot. It's saying, it's weird looking at these dates because according to this, it's 1910, 1978, but this is BC.
Right. So you're counting backwards.
Mm-hmm. A long time ago.
Yeah. So then they settle in Shechem, which, if you're interested in Shechem, go listen to our teaching on Ebal and Gerizim.
Yeah, blessings and curses.
Blessings and curses.
A 4-part series. Shameless plug. And then you have this story, which it's kind of weird. I don't know why it goes up and down, but I think it just shows that he goes to Canaan, he goes to Egypt, and back to Canaan. Is all that's trying to show. And so this is the Egyptian line, which we saw last time. The Egyptian line was Mitzrayim and connected to Ham. Yeah. And so...
I think they just needed a lot of information to put in this little bit of time that's happening.
Yeah. And we also see the story of how Abraham and Lot separate, or Abram and Lot. And you also see a lot about Abram's character there, where he literally tells his nephew, hey, you can pick. I'll take whatever you don't want. Yeah. Which is very mature. Yeah. And, of course, Lot seems to be a little selfish, and he's like, well, I want the best, so I'm taking the best. Good luck to you, sir. Yeah. So it does kind of seem to go down that way. Right. And we know what happens with Lot.
Yes. So he goes to Sodom. So pitches his tent towards Sodom.
Yes, and ironically, it is also, it's not ironic. I don't believe that would be the right way, but it is like the broad path and the narrow path. So Lot appears to take the path that was easy and wide, and Abraham looks like he takes the narrow, more difficult path. Yeah. Which is very true. And so I believe that's just the same thing, just a little bit different place on this map. And so this all comes from the interactive time. So basically, if you click on this, this takes you to where I got this. And so you can find that online. I will put that, make that available to you. And then also, I don't know where I went. There it is. And then there's also this interactive timeline that I find pretty interesting, where you can type in names of people, and it will pull up a little article about them, and it kind of gives you, if you click on that, it gives you the timeline and different articles, scriptures related. So, I highly recommend looking at timelines to kind of help you understand some of this, because it is kind of confusing, and there's so much information, and just putting this, out on a timeline helps you visualize it a little bit better.
Yeah, definitely.
And so as you zoom out, you can see this one to me is not quite as good as the other one. Just, it's more modern.
It does have the searchability though.
Yeah, it definitely has.
And articles features in it and stuff, which is cool. Yeah.
So, and I did check them out, the people that put this out, and they didn't appear to be anything too crazy. So, anyway, check it out if you're interested.
Yeah, and we know crazy.
Yes, we do. We do know crazy. So, well, I think that unless there's something else you want to say here about the Call of Abram, the only thing I would say is, study that concept of Abram being mixed in with the nations, and being one of the Gentiles, if you will.
Right. Gentiles is not a New Testament concept, man.
No. Oh. And the Father calling him out to walk away from everything he knew, walk away from Babylon, and come follow his ways. Because Abram clearly didn't know everything he needed to know about following his ways.
Right.
And we see that. And we see this.
And if he did, then it wouldn't have taken much faith for him to do that.
Right.
So that's why the faith of Abraham is so important.
Yeah. Because he left everything. He literally dropped everything to follow this new path. So we encourage you to go read, search the scriptures, read about this, find out more about it for yourselves, and we'll continue our talk in Torah on another day.
Yep.
All
and
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.